Hello dearest friend, how are you? Welcome back for Listen Real and Interesting Stories, so let me start. The story is, last weekend I, 36F, drunkenly flashed my husband's, 31M, friends and he still can't let it go. I've apologized and promised to not drink again. What more can I do? It's almost 6 in the morning here and once again he's woken me up at 2 in the morning just to tell me how much he hates me and how deeply disappointed he is in me. It feels like this pattern of late-night confrontations is never-ending, and every time it happens, it leaves me feeling drained and miserable. Last Saturday I went out for lunch with a group of friends. It was supposed to be a simple outing, a chance to relax and enjoy some good company. I've probably been drunk no more than 10 times in my entire life, and this happened to be one of those rare occasions. I wasn't completely out of control or anything like that, but I was definitely tipsy, enough to feel a bit lightheaded and carefree. It was around 4 p.m. when I got home, and my husband had 2 of his friends over watching football together in the living room. My phone was nearly dead, so I went to grab my charger, which was plugged in near the TV. As I leaned over to reach it, I ended up blocking their view of the screen. They started playfully complaining and booing me, telling me to move out of the way so they could see the match. One of them jokingly said, "Move your arse, we're trying to watch the match." I don't know what came over me. I've never done anything like this before and it's completely out of character. But for some reason I turned around, pulled my top and bra down and said, "Watch these instead." Even as I write this, I feel overwhelmed with embarrassment and disbelief at my own actions. They all sat there in complete and utter shock, their faces frozen as they tried to process what had just happened. The room fell into an incredibly awkward silence that felt like it lasted far longer than it actually did, probably just a couple of seconds, but it felt endless to me. I immediately felt a wave of regret and humiliation crash over me. Without saying another word, I left the room as quickly as I could, leaving my charger behind and avoiding any further interaction with them. My heart was pounding and I was absolutely mortified by what I had just done. After my husband's friends finally left, he stormed upstairs, visibly furious. He was yelling and screaming at me and his voice was filled with anger and disbelief. He said I had completely humiliated him in front of his friends, calling me out for what he perceived as unfaithfulness. He accused me of cheating on him by behaving inappropriately in front of his friends and berated me for crossing a line he never expected. His words became even harsher as he insulted my looks and my age multiple times, making cutting remarks that I don't even want to repeat here because they were so hurtful. I felt awful and deeply ashamed of my actions. I knew what I had done was wrong and I didn't want to argue or make excuses. I just kept apologizing profusely, telling him over and over again that I was sorry and that I would do anything to make it up to him. My regret was overwhelming, and I was desperate to find a way to fix things, but his anger showed no signs of subsiding. The whole situation left me feeling completely drained, embarrassed, and unsure of how to even begin repairing the damage I had caused. The next day, I once again apologized for my actions, repeating how deeply sorry I was for embarrassing him and upsetting him in such a significant way. I told him that if he wanted me to leave, I would do so, but if he wanted to work through this, I was willing to do whatever it took to make things right. I made it clear that I was ready to take responsibility for my mistake and try to rebuild his trust, no matter how difficult that might be. He eventually handed me a list of conditions I had to meet in order to make it up to him and begin repairing our relationship. The list was detailed and left no room for negotiation. 1. Don't drink at all. This one wasn't a big deal for me since I rarely drink anyway, so I immediately agreed. 2. Delete his 2 friends who were present off social media. I didn't hesitate to do this either, even though it felt a little excessive. I removed them from all my accounts without question. 3. Do all the cooking and cleaning for an entire month. I didn't push back on this request either and started handling all the household chores right away. 4. Message the girlfriends of his friends, confess what I did, and apologize. This was probably the most humiliating item on the list, but I followed through. Both girlfriends responded politely and didn't seem particularly bothered by the incident, which was a small relief, but it didn't lessen the embarrassment I felt. 5. Sleep in the spare room until he decides he's ready for me to come back to bed. This one hurt the most. It made me feel like I was being punished every single night, with no clear end in sight. I followed through on everything he asked of me, hoping it would help ease the tension and start to repair the damage between us. Despite completing each task, his anger didn't seem to subside. Every night, without fail, he would wake me up in the middle of the night. He'd shout at me, call me names, and bring up the incident repeatedly. His words were sharp and cutting, making it impossible for me to feel any sense of progress or forgiveness. This morning, after enduring yet another sleepless night filled with shouting, I finally reached my breaking point. I told him directly that this cycle couldn't continue. I said that he needed to decide whether he was ready to move forward and let me work to regain his trust or if he wanted me to leave. I told him I was prepared to go live with my mom if he couldn't begin the process of healing or at least let me get a full night's sleep. I wasn't trying to give him an ultimatum, but I also couldn't continue living in this constant state of tension and punishment. It wasn't healthy for either of us, and it was becoming increasingly clear that something had to change. It's been a week since the incident, and while I fully acknowledge that my actions were inappropriate and caused a great deal of hurt, I am beginning to feel completely overwhelmed by the ongoing fallout. I know that what I did was wrong. I disrespected my husband in front of his friends, embarrassed him, and damaged the trust and foundation of our relationship. I have taken full responsibility for my behavior, apologized repeatedly, and agreed to the conditions he set to try to make things right. However, despite all of this, I feel like the situation is spiraling out of control, and I'm struggling to cope with the hostility I'm facing every single day. I've done everything he asked me to do. I agreed to stop drinking entirely, even though I hardly ever drink in the first place. I deleted his 2 friends who were present that day from all of my social media accounts, even though it felt unnecessary and a little extreme. I took on all of the cooking and cleaning for an entire month, even though I already contribute a lot to household responsibilities. I even messaged the girlfriends of his 2 friends to apologize and explain what happened, which was one of the most humiliating things I've ever had to do. They didn't even seem to care all that much, but I did it because he wanted me to. Lastly, I've been sleeping in the spare room, respecting his wish for distance, even though it's been incredibly painful for me to feel so rejected and shut out. Despite doing all of this, I feel like things haven't improved. Every single night since this happened, he has woken me up to yell at me, insult me, and call me names. I understand that he's angry, and I completely understand why he feels hurt and betrayed. I know that what I did crossed a line and disrespected our relationship. But the constant shouting, the insults, and the lack of any progress toward reconciliation are taking a toll on me emotionally, mentally, and physically. I haven't been able to sleep properly in days, and it's starting to affect my ability to function during the day. This morning I hit my breaking point. I told him that I can't keep going on like this. I told him that either we need to figure out a way to move past this and start working toward rebuilding our relationship, or I will leave and stay with my mom for a while to give us both some space. I'm not saying I want to end our marriage or that I'm giving up on us, but I need to take care of myself too. I can't keep living in a state of constant conflict with no end in sight. Now I'm questioning myself. Was I too harsh to say I'd leave? I feel guilty even thinking about walking away even temporarily because I know that I'm the one who made the mistake. I know that my actions hurt him deeply, and I want to do whatever I can to make it right. But I also feel like I've already done everything I can think of to show him that I'm sorry and to make amends. Is there more I can do to help him feel better? Is there some other way I can prove to him that I regret what happened and that I'm committed to fixing our relationship? I don't want to give up on us, but I also don't know how much longer I can endure this constant tension and hostility. I need advice on how to navigate this situation, how to support him without losing myself in the process, and how to start moving forward from here. Let's see some relevant comments of this post, and after we'll start update post. First comment is, that is a small betrayal. He doesn't own your body. He is now being incredibly abusive to get back at you. She replied to the first comment, my friend said that, but at the same time I'm in the wrong. I'm confused. Lack of sleep isn't helping. Second comment is, you messed up and he took less than a week to turn it into an excuse to be abusive. This is about enjoying punishing you, not what you've done. She replied to second comment is, he's never done anything like this before though, so it feels like it's my fault and I've driven him to it. I can't be woken up by having someone shine a torch on me and scream in my face again though. I'm so tired but scared to sleep. Reply of her replied comment, should get therapy to deal with any unresolving issues. She replied, I have suggested therapy and he just said, I don't need it, you do, for being a slag. Third comment is, yeah, the punishment massively outweighs the crime. Is he usually like this? She replied to third comment. He's always been someone who operates in a very tit-for-tat mindset, and I've noticed this pattern throughout our relationship. It seems like, for him, everything has to be an equal exchange or even a way of evening the score, rather than simply being about supporting or celebrating one another. For example, a couple of years ago, I got COVID and ended up being hospitalized for 2 weeks. It was one of the scariest experiences of my life. I was weak, frightened, and deeply worried about my health, not to mention the impact on our lives. When I finally made it home, still recovering and far from feeling like myself, the very first thing he said to me wasn't about how relieved he was that I was okay or about how much he missed me. Instead, his focus was on the fact that he had done all the housework for those 2 weeks, and now it was my turn to take over everything because, in his eyes, he had done more than his fair share during my illness. Another instance was when I got a promotion at work, a moment that should have been about celebrating my hard work and achievements. As part of the promotion, I was able to upgrade to a newer car, something I'd been needing for a while, and I was so excited about it. But instead of sharing in my joy or feeling happy for me, his immediate reaction was to say that it wasn't fair and that he should get a new car too. It felt like he couldn't just be supportive or content with something good happening in my life unless he was also benefiting from it in the same way. This mentality extends into almost every part of our relationship. If I do something nice for him, it's almost like he's keeping a tally, waiting for the moment he can either return the favor or point out how I owe him something in return. It's exhausting because it feels like there's never any room for generosity or kindness for its own sake. It always has to be calculated, measured, and reciprocated in a specific way. In the current situation, his tit-for-tat approach is making things even harder. I've already apologized countless times for what happened, taken full responsibility for my actions, and followed through on everything he's asked me to do to make amends. But it feels like, in his mind, the scales are still unbalanced, and he's determined to keep punishing me until he feels like we're even. It's like there's no room for forgiveness or understanding, just this endless cycle of scorekeeping and blame. I'm starting to realize how much this dynamic has affected me over the years. I've always tried to be patient and accommodating, to meet his expectations and make things right whenever there's a conflict. But it's becoming clear that no matter what I do, it's never enough. There's always something more he wants, something else I need to do to prove myself or make things fair in his eyes. This way of operating in our relationship has left me feeling drained, undervalued, and constantly on edge. I want to believe that we can work through this and rebuild our relationship, but I'm not sure how to move forward when everything feels like a transaction instead of a partnership. I don't know if he even realizes how much his tit-for-tat mindset is impacting us or if he's willing to change. I'm stuck between wanting to do everything I can to repair the damage I've caused and feeling like I'm trapped in a dynamic where I'll never be good enough, no matter how hard I try. It's a painful and confusing place to be, and I'm not sure how much longer I can keep giving without getting anything back in return. She posted an update on December 15, 2024. The night after I made this post, things escalated further. He woke me up again, this time shouting and shining a torch directly in my face. It felt like the last straw. I couldn't take any more. I packed some essentials and decided to go to my mom's house for some space and support. While I was there, he didn't let up. He was constantly texting me, sending abusive messages and calling me every name under the sun. It was relentless and overwhelming, so I eventually decided to block him. Unfortunately, that only redirected his anger toward my mom, and he started sending her horrible messages too, trying to drag her into the situation. After a couple of days at my mom's, I decided it was time to confront the situation head-on. I needed clarity on whether he wanted to work on our marriage or if we were going to end things for good. I went back to the house to talk things over with him and hopefully find some resolution. When I arrived, he opened the door, but as soon as I stepped inside, everything spiraled out of control. He suddenly shoved me in the back, causing me to fall to the floor. As I struggled to get up, he kicked me back down again, calling me a slag with such venom in his voice that it left me speechless. I managed to get back on my feet and tried to reason with him, my voice shaking as I said, "You're being ridiculous. None of this is appropriate. This is all over 1 second of a stupid boob flash." My words didn't seem to reach him. Instead, he turned toward me, his face twisted in anger, and punched me directly in the mouth. I was stunned, not just by the physical pain but by the sheer reality of what had just happened. In that moment, everything changed. There was no dramatic confrontation after that. I didn't yell or scream. I didn't cry or try to argue with him. I just turned around, opened the door, and walked out of the house. Walking away felt like the only option left. The physical violence was a line I never imagined he would cross, and it shattered any hope I had for a peaceful resolution. As I left, I didn't look back. I couldn't bring myself to say anything else because, deep down, I knew there was nothing left to say. The person I had loved and committed my life to had crossed a boundary that couldn't be undone, and in that moment, I knew I needed to prioritize my own safety and well-being. It was a painful and surreal experience, one that left me questioning everything about our relationship and how it had come to this point. But more than anything, it solidified my realization that I couldn't continue living in such a toxic and harmful environment. I had to put myself first, no matter how difficult or heartbreaking that decision might be. I've taken steps to protect myself by documenting everything. I've saved pictures of my swollen and bruised lip from when he hit me, as well as the vile messages he sent afterward. In those messages, he continued to berate me, calling me names and saying that what happened was the least I deserved. Each word he wrote further solidified my resolve to take control of this situation. Right now, I'm staying at my mom's house, trying to gather my strength and make sense of everything. After the new year, I've decided that I will ask him for a divorce. I plan to present him with two choices. We can handle this process fairly and amicably, allowing both of us to move forward quickly, or I'll involve the police. It's not an easy decision to make, but it feels like the only path forward that ensures my safety and allows me to reclaim my life. On top of everything, some of his friends found my original post about this situation. Instead of seeing it as a cry for help or an attempt to find clarity, they've chosen to lash out at me. They've been sending me messages, calling me names, and accusing me of airing his business in public. To those friends, if you happen to come across this update too, hello. I see you, and your attempts to intimidate me won't change the truth of what's happened or deter me from doing what's best for myself. All of this drama, all of this pain and anger, has stemmed from a single impulsive and regrettable moment, a 1-second flash of my chest. It's absurd when you think about it, but the fallout has been anything but trivial. To those who keep asking me how I would feel if he did something similar, here's my response. He's always walking around the house topless. It's never been an issue because I don't equate a man's bare chest to some profound violation. And for those comparing my mistake to exposing genitals, let me just say this. If he ever decided to do something silly like willycopter around the room, I'd probably laugh. Honestly, it would look ridiculous, especially since he's well endowed, so it would probably look funny spinning around. The point is, this situation has spiraled far beyond what it ever should have. It's no longer about the initial incident but about how we've chosen to treat each other in the aftermath. His anger, his violence, and his unwillingness to move past this moment have shown me that this marriage isn't salvageable. While I regret what happened, I refuse to let this mistake define me or dictate the rest of my life. Moving forward, I'm focused on healing and building a future where I can feel safe, respected, and at peace. Let's see some relevant comments of this update. First comment is downvoted, but she has replied to comment, so comment is, I have not read the first post. That being said, based on what you said here, I can understand why he is upset. You don't seem to think what you did is a big deal, which is weird, but it is what it is. However, being upset does not make it okay for him to physically or verbally abuse you. It doesn't matter what you did, abuse is never okay. It's good that you've decided to leave permanently. That is the only way forward. There is no going back or fixing things once he puts his hands on you. She replied to first comment is, I apologized a million times. Thank you so much for listening story to the end. If you enjoy our videos, so don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Have a good day, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do it and hit the notification bell icon to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.